that is the highest energy ever consumed in a day since power sector came to being in Nigeria, and we are proud to achieve this.
It took the country about 40 years to attain 4,000 megawatts of power, but with its reforms, this government has been able to add 1,700 megawatts to attain a peak generation of 5,800 megawatts in less than 2 years.
Now that we have created the trajectory, if we sustain this trajectory, I can assure you that before the end of this administration in 2027, the first 10 of this administration, 2027, we should be able to generate and distribute nothing less than 8,000 megawatts of power.
Investments are now coming into the electricity sector as a result of the reforms by the government. Many states now regulate their own electricity market. The government is also investing heavily on renewable energy to power communities across the country that are not connected to the national grid through the Rural Electrification Agency. While the electricity sector still faces a number of challenges, the reform in the sector is no doubt changing the narrative one step at a time. In the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, an infrastructure revolution is going on. The Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, and his team are bringing the president's ambitious aspirations of the capital to reality, one project at a time. In just 2 years, the number of projects executed and completed is mind-blowing. And they run across the entire FCT, covering both the city centers and satellite areas where many of the residents and indigenous people live.
The leadership Mr. President has shown is what has encouraged us to take bold decisions to say, look, we can't continue to be business as usual. We must do things in different ways. But before that, it was difficult because that leadership was not provided. And you don't want to go and take a decision where you're embarrassed by appointment. Nobody does that. So now we have seen that we have a leadership that's focused and said, it wants results. It does not want excuses. It does not want, oh, you see, people did it. No. He has confidence in you. He believes you have what it takes to support him, to achieve what he has promised Nigerians. So what is all this excuses that this happened, that didn't happen? So all we are doing is to continue for what we have stopped last year. Last year, it took us about 12 days, 13 days of commission of projects. This year alone, it's taking us 19 good days of projects that will touch on the life of the people, those who reside in the city and those who reside in the satellite center. It has never happened.
The projects are fast changing the face of Abuja. New bus terminals have sprung up in the city. New roads and bridges have been built, and more are still under construction. Satellite towns are now being opened up as genuine development is reaching underserved communities in the FCT. One of the key sectors President Tinubu prioritized on coming into office is the health sector. It's partly what informed his decision to poach Professor Mohamed Pate from the Global Vaccine Alliance Gavi and appointed him Nigeria's coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare. Almost 2 years on, and with the introduction of several reforms by the administration, Nigeria's once broken health system is now being fixed.
The investment that we have had in 2024 and here now in 2025 being planned for infrastructural upgrades. This country has never seen something like that. Let me give you an example. Cancer, which is a major issue that is emerging in our society. President approved for 6 major cancer infrastructural upgrades and equipment upgrades in 2024 in February. World-class radiodiagnostic centers in collaboration with NSIA, for instance. There are 10 major radiodiagnostic centers that are being constructed right now. The subsidy that the federal government provided for dialysis, for instance, for kidney patients. Federal government bought 10,000 dialysis commodities through centers all across the geopolitical zones of Nigeria to make it cheaper for patients that are dialysis dependent, and accelerated renal transplant centers. Sokoto had its first renal kidney transplant. Now Ife is coming along. There are others that are looking at that. We're now beginning to think of liver transplant. open heart surgery. There are many of those infrastructural upgrades. So the kinds of things that you are hearing from abroad, or you have to go to Egypt or somewhere else to get them, are beginning to be feasible here. My goodness, orthopedics, a major cause of people traveling abroad. My own father had a domestic accident, had a major fracture in his mid-80s, but he was fixed within a week in a public hospital in this country, and within 4 weeks he was already standing.
Anchored in the Nigeria Health Sector Renewal Investment Initiative, the reform in the health sector is fast transforming the country's health infrastructure, attracting over $3 billion in grants and investments. The government is investing massively to turn around the country's primary healthcare system. Existing primary healthcare centers are being upgraded. Over 8,000 new ones are now being built across the country.
So we set out to expand the primary healthcare system, to make it functional at level 2, to improve the level of functionality. So we embarked on increasing the functionality of 8,800 primary healthcare centers, and over time expanding them to 17,000 that are functional, so that Nigerians will have the retail points working between federal government, states, local governments, private sector, development partners to roll that going forward, to revitalize the basic healthcare provision fund. And in the last 2 years, we have had 6 out of the 11 ministerial oversight convenings of the basic healthcare provision fund that disburse resources to all the 36 states, to those thousands of primary healthcare centers that are called BHCPF facilities all across Nigeria, that receive on a quarterly basis disbursements for their fuel, for their running costs, for stipend for their health workers, for buying drugs and commodities for the patient that they see on the supply side. And with that, we're seeing of today 20 million contacts every quarter.
Beyond health infrastructure, the Tinubu administration is making healthcare easily accessible for all Nigerians. Today, pregnant women who require cesarean section can access the service for free at federal health facilities. Kidney patients can now get up to 80% subsidy on dialysis services at 11 federal hospitals across the country. And to address the manpower shortage in the health sector, the government has so far recruited over 2,000 doctors and nurses, as well as engaged 774 national health fellows across local government areas in the country. Over 600,000 health workers have also been retrained for better health services.
All in all, I think if you take the 2 years of this president's tenure is the midterm, I would say that we've turned around what was a very complex, underfunded, hyper-fragmented sector that underperformed relative to its peers to one that is being recognized in the continent and beyond the continent as one that is on a trajectory of much better performance and also is being touted as a leader.
Even though the president signed an executive order waiving import duty on health equipment, the government is also ramping up efforts on local pharmaceutical production.
By 2027, it is expected that 60% of health products, including personal care products, will be manufactured in Nigeria.
For over a decade, Nigeria has battled myriad of insecurity challenges, pushing the country to the brink. Learning from the challenges and successes of the previous administrations before it, and barring recent setbacks, the Tinubu administration is changing the narrative.
I think the most obvious thing is the commitment by the government. From the beginning, the president made very clear his commitment to address the security challenge, and this is manifested in different ways. First, in his renewed hope agenda, where he made security the second key priority, as it were. Then he also listed 8 elements that he put forward to address the national security challenge. Also, in terms of budgeting, we've seen a very steady increase, and in fact, an obvious increase in budgetary provision for the security sector. from what he inherited at about 1 point something trillion to 3.6 trillion thereabout, which is the last budget, the 2025 budget. We've also seen his engagement with the security sector leadership. You recall that one of the first things he did after his swearing in on May 29th, 2023, was to visit the Office of the National Security Advisor, and he also had meetings with some of the security sector leadership. So that commitment, I think, it's unquestioned.
In just 2 years, the security reforms of the administration are bearing positive results. Terrorist attacks are declining. At some point, they've reached their lowest in over a decade. Terrorism-related deaths are also coming down. Attacks in the southeast have now been reduced by almost 75%.
The last 2 years is watershed, indeed, in the fight against banditry. 11,250 hostages on record free. A decline. We started witnessing the decline in abduction. Decisive blows to top warlords. The Kachallas, Ali Kachalla, Boderi, Halilu Sububu, Dangote, Isu, Yellow, Damuna, Buhari, all of them have met their creator. Over 50 of such leaders were eliminated. Over 70 of their deputies, commanders, and hundreds of foot soldiers neutralized. In the Northeast, Mr. President, where it all started over 20 years ago, the Boko Haram, the jihadis, over 13,543 terrorists and criminals neutralized since we came in. Over 124,408 Boko Haram ISWAP fighters and family members surrendered. Over 11,118 weapons recovered and destroyed. 52,596 rounds of assorted ammunition recovered and destroyed just in Borno State. Southeast, a welcome development is that the sit-at-home orders is becoming more and more ineffective. Key IPOP ESN figures capture and neutralize many in the battlefield. Over 50 police stations and many police forces are back in business. Attacks on security forces significantly reduced. Social and economic activities are normalizing. This can be testified by anyone who will visit the Southeast today.
Insecurity still remains a challenge in Nigeria, but the Tinubu administration is tackling it head-on with a clear focus and determination.
We will invest more in technology. We will take over all our forests. We must neutralize kidnapping, banditry, and terrorism. It was never like this before in Nigeria. But we will reverse the trend.
The aviation sector is not left out in the gradual transformation of the country as a result of the Tinubu administration's bold initiatives. Since he was appointed Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo has been leading the charge to transform the sector in line with the president's plan.
Through policy trusts, we have restored international and global confidence in the aviation ecosystem, especially in the global leasing world. We have brought back that confidence in the Nigerian ecosystem. And we have been able to do this, by instilling integrity in our system. And this was a fallout of our compliance, our strict compliance with the Cape Town Convention that we had been signatories to, but were very poor in adhering to the terms of that convention. And so it was public knowledge last year that we went ahead and took practical steps to comply with the tenets of the convention. We signed the practice direction in Nigeria, and then also rolled out the IDERA by the NCA. And these two actions by Nigeria catapulted Nigeria from 49.5% to 75.5% on the global compliance scale. And that officially is the highest in Africa. So as I speak with you, international leaders and financiers are back in Nigeria right now. And it's only a matter of time, not a long time, before Nigerians will feel the full impact in terms of newer aircrafts, in terms of lower prices, ticket prices, because it will lead to more competition, both on domestic, regional, and international routes.
The new international terminal in Lagos, built by the previous administration, is now fully operational. Plans are now underway for a complete remodeling of the old terminal. Several routes are now being opened for ease of connections across the continent and beyond. And some airlines that left Nigeria in the past are now back. Key bilateral air service agreements have been finalized, integrating Nigeria more deeply into the global aviation ecosystem, facilitating easier and more efficient air travel between Nigeria and other countries under mutual benefits.
We have been able to open up a number of routes again for our domestic airlines, and also to attract some other international airlines to ensure that traveling experience for Nigerians is enhanced, and Nigerians have more options on some of these international routes. And so, of course, you saw the return of Emirates, the return of Emirates to the Nigerian domestic international routes. I mean, the return of Emirates to Nigeria. And Nigerians are beginning to enjoy that hub now in Dubai in their international travel. But there are other routes that we have been able to attract to Nigeria. You know, the Italian route had been closed for decades. Air Italia stopped flying to Nigeria many years ago. We've been able to attract another, international airline. And today we have opened up the Italian route again. We have also opened up the Algiers, Abuja, and Douala route, Cameroonian route. Before, it was so funny that you could not even take a 1 hour flight to Cameroon. I mean, it was so funny. And when I came to office, I said, how could this happen? Just 1 hour to Cameroon. You have to fly to Addis Ababa first and maybe spend one night before you now connect from Addis Ababa to Cameroon. Or you fly to Togo first, because Togo has a small hub there. And then from Togo, you now come and you start flying all over Nigeria. You'll be flying on top of Nigeria to go to Cameroon. That was how, odd it was in terms of connectivity. But today we have been able to attract that, and so on and so forth. So we have opened up so many other routes today in Nigeria.
Aviation infrastructure are also being improved upon. The long-delayed Abuja Airport second runway expansion is now getting off the ground. For the first time, the country now has the e-visa system for efficiency and ease of travelers as part of the immigration reforms of the government to strengthen the country's air borders. There are also 40 e-gates at all major international airports in the country for faster and more secure passenger processing. Passport application process is now fully automated, significantly reducing waiting time. Gone are the days of passport backlogs.
What we've been able to do is to introduce the contactless passport application system for, obviously, passport renewals. So, and that is live and direct. It was started in November. I think November 1st, we started last year in Canada. From Canada, we're able to move to Europe, and Europe excluding UK and I think Ireland. Then we were able to move to UK now, and Ireland now. We've moved to America, we've moved to Asia and other part of Africa as well. So it means that a Nigerian does not need to go to the embassy to renew his passport. Another major thing that we're also doing is to also bring a bit of to be serious integrity to our passport. And what do we mean? What do I mean by that? I'll break it into 2 or 3. Number one, when this government came on board, Nigerian passport was not registered on the ICAO PKI PKD. That's public key infrastructure, public key directory of ICAO. So it means that verification of Nigerian travel document was near impossible real time, in across all borders in the world, airports and whatever. So that's why when a Nigerian travels with a Nigerian passport, he has a more difficult chance of being attended to than a foreigner. But this particular, under this administration for the first time, Nigerian travel document, the passport has been imported into the PKD ICAO directory. So Nigeria is now compliant. And I'll tell you that before this government came on board, we never had any, in fact, profiling at our border posts were basically subjective and never objective. Profiling wasn't based on the principle of objectivity. And you know that any decision that you make on the premise of subjectivity is likely going to be laden with errors. But this government came and we introduced what we call the API solution, which is the Advanced Passenger Information System in terms of our air borders. So such a way now that before any passenger comes into Nigeria, we have the opportunity of pre-profiling such passengers and we can easily identify persons of interest.
Successes have also been recorded in the agriculture sector. The government is driving a massive mechanization process to boost food production and security. Thousands of tractors and other agricultural inputs have been deployed to help farmers not only farm on a large scale, but also rapidly improve their yields.
Mr. President has transformed agriculture from potential to performance. And is, like I said, driven by mechanization to market access, from inputs to export driven. Saudi Arabian minister came last year and he came and sought for 1 million tons of alfalfa and 1 million tons of soya and 200,000 tons of red meat. Today, we have already started that engagement, and that is a drive that was spearheaded by Mr. President when we all accompanied him to Saudi Arabia in November of 2023.
In its determination to combat food inflation, hundreds of thousands of hectares of land are being cultivated for wheat production across several states in the country. Over 100,000 farmers have so far been supported, and more agro-rangers are being deployed to provide security for farmers.
3 other programs that we have seen that has made an impact is the mechanization program of Mr. President. That is a wonderful legacy. We have, like I said, the GIP is also mechanization partly. And then the Greener Hope, which seeks to provide almost about 10,000 different implements from tractors to harrows and other agricultural equipment over a period of 10 years. And that will also seek to set up about 1,000 service centers across the nation, and also to develop 150,000 hectares of land across the Federation, with 25,000 from each geopolitical zone. So over 6 and 25,000 makes 150,000. So those two, the Belarus tractors and John Deere, are procurement. The GIP and the Greener Hope are collaborative efforts. So we have already started receiving, right now in Abuja, we have almost 700 tractors on ground out of the 2,000 from the Belarus. And very soon, Mr. President is going to launch those tractors.
The First Lady, Remi Tinubu, has taken a very keen interest in the agriculture sector and has been very supportive of efforts to make Nigeria food secure. In her quest to attract young people to farming, she launched the Young Farmers Club Nigeria in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security as part of her pet project, Renewed Hope Initiative. The Young Farmers Club Nigeria aims to revive Nigeria's indigenous occupation of farming, create employment opportunities, diversify the economy, and ensure food security.
Agriculture has always been the backbone of our nation. From time past, we have tilled the land with our hands and hearts, to the present, where agriculture continues to be a crucial part of our daily lives and economy. It is clear that farming is not just an occupation. It is a way of life which can create employment opportunities for a teeming young population, help diversify the economy, and put food on our tables. As I reminisce, I remember the groundnut pyramids and cotton plantations in the north, palm oil cultivation in the east, cocoa and rubber plantations in the west and the southern part of Nigeria. I believe all of these can be resuscitated and scaled up with modern techniques and mechanization.
So far, many young people across the country have signed up to the initiative and beginning to take to farming. Gradually, misconceptions about farming among young people are changing. There have been so many positives for the country in the last 2 years. Indeed, some of the reforms have come with initial challenges, but they are now being overcome, and light is beginning to appear at the end of the tunnel.
A lot has happened in the last few years that's commendable. I'll call it, these 2 years have been the years of reform. Going forward now, the idea is to ensure that these reforms, the benefit of these reforms, really reach the people.
Let's do the hard work. And it will take time before the results become widely apparent, but we are seeing changes that are showing us that we are on the right track.
We have a unique opportunity under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration to compete with our contemporaries, our peers all over the world. You need home government support to compete, and we have it.
Nigeria is certainly on the rise. With the Renewed Hope agenda, the Tinubu administration is fixing Africa's most populous country and getting it to fire on all cylinders.
Welcome to the program. I am Okbayemi Owosheni. Cash held outside Nigeria's banking system has declined to its lowest level in 7 months in June 2026, reflecting a gradual return of physical currency to deposit money banks amid the CBN's efforts to deepen digital payment. The latest money and credit statistics released by the CBN show that currency outside banks fell to 4.92 trillion naira in June from 5.19 trillion naira in May 2026. Now, the June figures represent the lowest level since November 2025, when currency outside banks stood at 4.91 trillion naira. The decline comes as the Apex Bank continues to promote electronic payment and financial inclusion as part of effort to reduce the economy's dependence on cash transactions. Now, Brazil has filed a request seeking a World Trade Organization consultation over tariffs imposed by the United States on several products, according to the Foreign Ministry. President Donald Trump's administration has imposed 2 rounds of tariffs on Brazil this month, which left-wing president and re-election candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has denounced as election interference. Brazil took the same step in 2025 when Washington imposed 50% tariffs in retaliation for the coup-related trial that sent former president to prison. We'll now take a break here, but when Money Matters return, we'll be discussing the United States imposing new tariff on Nigeria import over forced labor-produced goods. I'll bring you details of this after this break. Welcome back. Now, the United States has imposed a 12.5% tariff on imports from Nigeria over the country's failure to prohibit and effectively enforce a ban on goods produced with forced labor. The announcement was made by the Office of the United States Trade Representative, who said the measure targets countries that have not implemented or enforced restrictions on imports linked to forced labor. Unfortunately, Nigeria falls among 6 affected countries. Others are India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. Nigeria, however, faces a higher tariff of 12.5%, while other countries were subjected to a 10% rate. Now, so what does this decision really mean for Nigerian businesses, exporters, and the wider economy? And what does it tell us about the changing landscape of global trade? To help us unpack these issues, I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you for joining me on the program, Dr. Muda. Now, what do you make of this old tariff imposed on Nigeria now by Donald Trump?
Well, this is a continuation of the protectionist tendencies of the United States under President Trump. You recall that in April last year, he imposed wide-ranging tariffs on imports into the United States on the day he called Liberation Day. And it was far-reaching. It affected many economies, including Nigeria. But the Supreme Court of the United States early this year, nullified those imposition of tariffs. So what President Trump has done now is to reintroduce those tariffs under a new legislation, alleging forced labor, that countries that have imported goods from countries where forced labor is being used to produce are the ones being targeted. So I think it's just a ploy or a strategy to replace the reciprocal tariff, which was nullified by the Supreme Court, with a new tariff now, being now framed as imports from countries where forced labor has been used to produce. So the summary of it is, this is about protectionism, essentially. That is what it is. And of course, it will affect countries depending on their exposure to the United States as far as the export is concerned.
All right, now I went through your publication regarding this issue, and I saw that you argued that the economic impact of this 12.5% tariff now on Nigeria is likely to be modest because crude oil and LNG, that are dominant export to the US, are exempt. So is there a danger now that the public is overestimating the significance of this announcement on Nigeria?
Yes, the impact on Nigeria, of course, will be very limited, because the tariff policy, which was announced by the United States, exempted some category of products. It exempted oil and gas, it exempted fertilizer, anything that has to do with energy, or even some agricultural products were also exempted. And because over 80% of our exports to the United States is actually oil and gas. So that means that over 80% of what we export to the United States have been exempted already. So our exposure, to this new tariff is just covering about 15 to 20% of exports to the United States. So to that extent, the impact on our trade balances, the impact on our export penetration to the United States will be very minimal by virtue of the structure of our exports, to the United States.
All right, now I understand that this is very minimal, but then even if the immediate microeconomic impact is limited, does this tariff send a worrying signal about Nigeria's reputation in global trade, particularly when it is linked to allegations around forced labor and supply chain standards?
Well, these are the level of allegations. These things were announced. There was no evidence provided. You see, the overriding objective actually of the United States under its current president is protectionism. The whole idea is to ensure that the manufacturing firms in the United States are protected. because they are increasingly becoming uncompetitive. These allegations are not proven in most of the cases. That is not to say that as a country we should not watch out for the possibilities of this. But I can tell you that the overall objective of this is to substitute this new policy for the reciprocal tariff that was nullified by the United States Supreme Court. So now the US government has now invoked the Trade Act, which created a window, to penalize countries that import from countries that use forced labor. Most of our imports, come from China, from India, even some from United States. So we need to see the evidence actually in order for us to be able to accept fully that really we are guilty of this allegation.
What options now do you think the Nigerian government has regarding this? Because it's a really big allegation, if you ask me. So what position now should the government take regarding this allegation?
Well, there has to be engagement with the U.S. authorities. For the 20% of product that may be affected, I think it makes sense to also engage with the United States to see how we can get around it, and to assure the United States authority that in the spirit of good economic and trade relations, these things should be reviewed. And we also import a lot from the United States. United States, the trade surplus, with United States is actually in favor of the United States. So the trade relationship between us is good, it's robust, although not so big. United States is about number 5 in terms of export destination for Nigeria. But there has to be engagement first to validate or otherwise the allegation of forced labor that has been leveled against countries from where we import. Secondly, to protect the interests of some of our smaller exporters, that export things that are not oil and gas related, which may be liable for this tariff, because that may affect their competitiveness. So the engagement is in order to have with the trade representatives or the relevant agencies of the United States.
Well, could this decision now have implications beyond the United States? Do you think there is a risk that other major trading partners may begin to scrutinize Nigeria's supply chains and labor practices more closely, potentially affecting Nigeria's access to other export markets?
No, not at all. I mean, it's very clear to practically everybody that this is just a strategy to protect the U.S. manufacturers. It's not as if there are really serious fundamental forced labor issues. Just as I said, these things have not been proven. And I'm not sure we have even been given any opportunity to defend this allegation. And this is not just only about Nigeria. We are talking about almost 60 trading partners of the United States. So it's not peculiar to us. And it's a sweeping allegation just to ensure that because of the setback that has been caused by the nullification by the Supreme Court of the reciprocal tariff, this is something just to substitute or to replace it, essentially. So other countries also understand that this is just a protectionist strategy. It's not as if there is any serious substance in the allegation to warrant, what has been claimed by the United States.
One of the other things you noted in the publication is that non-oil exporters, especially in agriculture and manufacturing, could be affected. Now, at a time when Nigeria is trying to transition and diversify away from oil, now, do you think this could in any way affect Nigeria's transitioning?
No, certainly not. What we need for transitioning is to improve our export competitiveness, is to improve our production environment, is to address the issue of cost of production, cost of credit, power cost, logistics cost. I think those are the bigger issues as far as export competitiveness is concerned, as far as even improving our balance of trade is concerned. So the issues are mainly structural. Of course, some exporters will be affected by this, but in terms of percentage and in terms of the likely impact, it's not likely to be that significant as to be a major issue as far as our export diversification is concerned. What is needed the most to promote diversification is to address all the structural constraints to production, all the structural constraints to export competitiveness, power, cost of credit, logistics, the port issues, and so on and so forth. Those are issues of bigger priority.
Okay, now, I think one other thing that really struck me is the fact that you pointed to AFCTA and export diversification, and you also mentioned it now. But given the current realities facing Nigerian manufacturers, from infrastructure deficit, high cost of production, which is something that manufacturers complain about a lot in Nigeria, will you say we are truly positioned now as a country to seize all of those opportunities?
Well, we still have major issues of productivity in the Nigerian economy. That is why, if you look, for instance, at the AGOA opportunity that we had for over 20 years, we couldn't take much opportunity of it. We couldn't improve our exports to the United States because AGOA gave, a very liberal window for African countries to export to the United States. But we couldn't take advantage of it because of competitiveness issues. Only recently, the Chinese government also has created a liberal window for imports into their country from many African countries, including Nigeria, free of duty. Even that, we are yet to take full advantage. So it is important that we strengthen our competitiveness. Even the AFCFTA, if we are not careful, we may also fall into the same situation. Because if we are competing with countries like Morocco, like Egypt, like South Africa, like Algeria, in the continental markets, and these are countries that have very solid infrastructure. Their competitiveness level is extremely high, their logistics is sound. Productivity in those economies are much higher. So if we are not careful, even within the context of the African continent and the African continental free trade area, we may also have challenges. So that is why we continue to emphasize the need for us to ensure that we provide adequate power, for manufacturers, improve access to credit, ensure that we have patient capital, that is long-term fund, ensure that we have lower cost of fund, possibly single digit, ensure that we improve on our logistics, our railway system, our networks in terms of waterways, railways, and road networks. All of these things are critical to ease the cost of logistics. So structural issues, again, are very critical. The regulatory environment is important. So all of these things will help to position Nigeria, to be a lot more competitive, to take advantage of some of these other trade opportunities, and more importantly, to take advantage of the AFCFTA opportunities that is emerging.
Now, let's talk about global trade now, because protectionism is something you've mentioned often now during the course of this interview. Do you think we are moving into an era where protectionism will become the new order of the day, like the US now?
Yeah, that is becoming the new order of the day. It's becoming the rule. Many countries are protecting their industries. I mean, if United States, which is the largest economy, globally, is taking this steps to protect its own industries. I mean, what do you expect of other countries? A lot of countries are also taking a cue. People are, walking away from globalization and doing more of protectionist policies. So we are seeing a bit of that even in Europe, in some countries in Asia, even within Africa. So it's becoming the norm now to ensure that we protect, or countries protect their industries. So we are seeing a reversal of the regime of globalization to a regime of what they call de-globalization. That's a reversal of globalization. So that is where we are now. So that is why it's important, even for Nigeria itself, to also begin to think of how it can protect its own industries, so that we don't expose our industries to competition that they may not be able to survive, especially competition of products from some of these Asian countries.
Well, now, let's step back from this specific tariff. What does this episode tell us about Nigeria's place in the global economy? Will you say we are adapting quickly enough now to a world where trade is increasingly being shaped by geopolitics, sustainability, and even supply chain standards?
Well, we are adapting, but we are still very slow.
Huh.
Because to take advantage of trade, you must be able to compete with respect to price and with respect to quality, and also with respect to your logistics, because that will help the speed at which you can deliver to your customers, whether locally or abroad. We still have a lot of challenges around that. So I'm not sure that we are adapting well enough. Our level of value addition is still very, very low. All the things that we need to produce competitively, we are still weak on many of those fundamental conditions. So our adaptation is extremely very slow, and I think we need to do a lot more to ensure that we don't turn Nigeria into a market destination. We want Nigeria to be an investment destination where people will come here and invest because they believe they can produce competitively, and sell their products competitively within the country and outside the country.
All right, now, what exactly do you think needs to be done by the Nigerian government and even policymakers now to protect Nigerian businesses, restore investor confidence, and prevent this issue from escalating into a wider trade problem?
Well, in terms of protecting Nigerian industries, we need to look at our trade policy. That's the tariff policy. Yeah. We need to have some measure of protectionist tariff policies. Just the same way as Trump is doing, President Trump, has been using tariff instruments a great deal to protect American companies. So we should also be doing that for Nigerian companies. A bit of that is already being done, because if you look at our fiscal policy document, there are quite a number of protectionist measures under the import adjustment tax. There's a column which is referred to as import adjustment tax, is to protect domestic industries. But more importantly is to ensure that we accelerate our power sector reform, our energy sector reform, so that we're able to deliver power to those who are producing and even for those who are in services. Because without adequate power, it is very, very difficult to compete as far as production is concerned. And we also need to focus a lot more on development finance, because at an interest rate of 30% and above, it is very difficult for any enterprise to take facility at that rate and be able to compete, whether locally or even abroad. So we need to look at issues of financing to ensure that we have a lot more patient capital, that's long-term funds, and we have credit facilities that are cheaper, maximum maybe 10%. Because all the countries that are making an impact in the global economy and global trade are countries where they have cheaper funds, they have much better government support, they have much better infrastructure. So we need to replicate those conditions here, if you really want to be part of the global supply chain.
All right, so just before I let you go, if we look back 5 years from now, do you think this tariff episode will be remembered as a minor trade adjustment, or maybe as a early warning now that Nigeria needed to fundamentally rethink how it participates in global trade?
Well, it is something that should guide future policy. And the fact that we are seeing increasing protectionism, globally,
yes,
speaks to the fact that we need to begin to do a lot more, to look inwards. We need to do a lot more to ensure value addition. We need to do a lot more to ensure that we are competitive at the regional level and at the continental level, so that whoever is investing in manufacturing is not just focusing on domestic markets, it should be focusing on the regional market, it should be focusing on the continental market. That is the way to grow an industry. That is the path to rapid industrialization. And all those things that we need to do, some of which I've mentioned, we need to put in place to ensure that we have a much higher level of productivity in the Nigerian manufacturing sector.
All right, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much for sharing your insights on the program.
Thank you very much, Okbai. Thank you.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I am Okbayemi Owosheni. See you next time.
What we really go through is not really meant for humans, because when you're there, like in a small room whereby you maybe like people of 10 people should be in, you come across like 100 people in a particular small room, and when you want to sleep, you have to sleep with your side. Everyone sleeps on sides. You understand? So there is no more space, and you want to ease yourself or make use of the toilet, it's just in front of you. So you can inhale the odor of the toilet, which is not conducive for the human health. So, and apart from that one, the weather is very, very cold, extremely cold. And at night, you don't have something like blankets that will be given to you. So it's not really good for the body, to be precise. And in terms of feeding, you're being given just a long bread. We call it hamsa. Just a long bread. That's your meal. They'll give you three of it. That's your meal for your lunch, your breakfast, and your dinner, which is not healthy at all. I was deported, and I was deported back to the border of Algeria and Mali. Okay, so when we were deported there, it was a Sahara desert, to be precise. That's where they will leave you. And when they leave you in that border between Algeria and Mali, you have to walk 7 kilometers to the border of Mali, and we call that 7 kilometers to hellfire, because it's extremely hot over there. Some of them you were not really giving food well when you were in the camp. You don't have the strength to even walk. Some of them died along the way. Some of them, I'm not gonna lie you, have to drink their own urine just to survive, to have strength to be able to go to that next borderline of the Algeria. So it's really, really hectic. You have to make a choice to go back to Algeria, or you have to go back to Morocco. And when you're being taken to the border of Algeria, the Algerian militants, they open fire on the militants of the Moroccans. So they don't have to hide. Or they can just tell you, okay, just go this way, just go down the valley, just stick like this. That is Algeria. So if you want to go back to Algeria, you will not have to surrender yourself to the militants of the Algerians. They will not put you into a deportation camp. They do not have to deport you back to Mali. So it's like you're being deported from one country to another. And you can imagine the shape of the deportation camp in Mali there. It is, oh God, it's unexplainable. I believe, I won't lie, I believe I spent 16 years in this journey. On transit.